Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom, and welcome to our program. And now we're going to continue talking about our featured work of literature, Daddy Longlegs. And we're asking the question, is this a feminist pioneer novel, or is it simply just an old story that sounds outdated?
Right. And today we're going to focus in on the author, Jean Webster. Her real name was Alice Jane Chandler Webster. That was her full name. I think we could say that, her full name. And we're going to find out kind of what she felt about the novel itself and how it's written. It's very interesting. It's very unusual. It's written via a series of letters. So you see her letters to Daddy Longlegs, and I'm assuming he wrote back to her. And his request of her, if he's going to give her money, was that she would write a monthly letter about what she was learning, how she was growing, things like that. I think he wanted to keep in touch. I mentioned this in day one. I think he saw her when she was still working at the orphanage and kind of maybe got a crush on her, thinking, oh, that's an awfully attractive young woman who's very bright, very smart. So we're going to find out more about that and whether it really is a feminist pioneer novel or maybe just an old-fashioned book that has no application in today's world. I don't feel that way, but we're going to listen to this read out loud and then we'll be back. Jean Webster, real name Alice Jane Chandler Webster, was born in 1876. She was a renowned American author from a family committed to education and social issues, which profoundly shaped her writing. Daddy Longlegs, her epistolary novel published in 1912, reflects these themes through the story of Judy Abbott, an orphan who becomes an academically ambitious young woman. The narrative unfolds through Judy's letters to her mysterious benefactor, nicknamed Daddy Longlegs. These letters display her developing worldview and sharp social observations. The novel's primary theme is the transformative power of education. Judy's college experiences reveal opportunities previously unavailable to her as an orphan. Education fosters her independence, shapes her perspectives, and redefines her identity. Her letters also emphasize the importance of self-discovery and ongoing self-improvement. The novel also explores rigid social class and gender roles in the early 20th century U.S. As Judy becomes more independent, she challenges her benefactor's authority and expectations. Her discussions on women's suffrage and career plans in her letters mirror early feminist movements and social changes. However, contemporary critics highlight issues such as portraying the ideal man as wealthy and romantic relationships as transactional. They argue that Jervis exploits Judy's gratitude and innocence to influence her values and believe that Judy is mainly attracted to his wealth. Defenders respond that the novel reflects its era, with a 14-year age gap between Judy and Jervis being typical at the time. They emphasize that their relationship is founded on mutual affection and respect, not just financial considerations. Despite varied interpretations, Daddy Longlegs remains a thought-provoking read. It invites readers to appreciate the historical and cultural shift from Webster's era to today, and to consider the narrative's potential controversies.
All right, everybody, let's talk about the contents of our lesson for today. We're talking about Daddy Longlegs, and the author is Jean Webster. Her real name was Alice Jane Chandler Webster. She was born in the year 1876. Okay, so that's quite some time ago. She was a renowned American author from a family committed to education and social issues, which profoundly shaped her writing. So this sentence gives us some information about the author. First of all, she was a renowned American author. That means she was famous. She was recognized by people who know about these things. They said that she was a good writer, so she was renowned, she was famous, she was critically acclaimed, and she was from a family that was committed to education and social issues. So this particular family thought education was very important, and social issues were also important, fighting for justice and things like that. And because of that family background, it influenced the way she writes.
So back at the turn of the century, they were discussing social issues like women's right to vote. Are we going to let women vote in our elections or not? Or here's another one. Should we be drinking so much alcohol? That was another of the issues. When families and couples got divorced back then, the man would automatically keep all the children and the woman would just be left with nothing. If they got married and she had property, if they were to get divorced, he would keep her property and she would be left with nothing. So there were lots of social issues back then. And so her family believed in educating themselves and talking about these social issues, trying to make society better. So it had a profound effect, or it shaped her writing, profoundly shaped her writing, kind of influenced her writing and what she wrote about. Daddy Longlegs is her epistolary novel published in 1912. So epistolary, guys, just means it's a work of literature that's composed of lots of letters back and forth. If some of you out there are Christians, you might know that the Bible, the New Testament, has a lot of epistles in it, letters that go back and forth from, say, Paul to other apostles who are out there preaching the gospel to people. Romans is a bunch of letters, so Romans is epistles. 1st, 2nd Timothy, all of these are epistolary books of scripture, but we also use this technique in novels. Maybe you've read some before where it's just a set of letters back and forth. I remember C.S. Lewis wrote the Screw Tape Letters. Remember? That's epistolary, where the devil is talking to his assistant and they have these great conversations back and forth. That's epistolary. So this was published in 1912, and she tells the story of Judy Abbott, or Jerusha Abbott, through a series of letters.
Right. This novel, of course, was published the year the Titanic sank. I wonder if it was published before the ship sank. It's possible that people on Titanic were reading this novel. Probably not, but in any case, that happened about the same time. And yes, indeed, it's a story of Judy Abbott. She's an orphan, and she becomes an academically ambitious young woman. First of all, let's talk about ambitious. That means you have a lot of desire to succeed. You have a lot of ambition. You're not passive. You're not lazy. You're not content to just work at a gas station or something like that. No, you want to do great things in life. You want to get a great degree. You want to get a good job. You want to travel the world. You want to be influential. She's very ambitious, and she's academically ambitious. Academic means having to do with education. So she's educated, or she's ambitious rather, in an academic way, which means, yes, she wants to succeed with education. She wants to get her degree, maybe go to graduate school, and maybe get her PhD.
Perhaps. I wouldn't have been surprised if that was her goal. So academically, it just refers to, as Tom said, education, scholarship, where you want to learn as much as you can. Now, the narrative refers to the story. We started using this word a lot these days, I would say the past decade, the narrative. On the news, they'll talk about the narrative. The narrative just refers to some story. And here it says the narrative unfolds. We often use this verb unfold to talk about folding our clothes or folding pieces of paper and unfolding them, stretching them out, extending them. But here it just means something is revealed, and usually if it unfolds, it gives you the feeling that the story is revealed little by little. They don't tell you everything all at once. It unfolds through a time. And here we're looking at a story that is unfolding through Judy's letters. And remember, she writes her benefactor once a month. So the story is unfolding as you read through the letters that go back and forth. And remember, her benefactor, her sponsor, is Daddy Longlegs. These letters display her developing worldview. So when she starts to go to university, she starts forming opinions about the world and what's going on. And also, she has very sharp or very clear social observations about what's going on in society.
Exactly, and I suspect that these observations from the character reflect the observations of the author herself, Jean Webster, because, again, she's from a family committed to education and social issues. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, the novel's primary theme is the transformative power of education. If something's transformative, it can transform things. It can change something from one thing into another. I assume they're talking about being poor, being humble, and if you get educated, it can change your life. You can become famous that way. You can become successful that way. You don't have to suffer from poverty and things like that. So indeed, education is a big game changer.
Judy's college experiences reveal opportunities previously unavailable to her as an orphan. The more education you have, the more skills you gain, the more opportunities you'll have out there in the world. That's just a fact of life. Education fosters or helps her independence grow. If you foster something, you help something develop or grow, and her independence becomes more and more healthy, you could say, as she's out there going to school. It shapes her perspectives. Your perspective on something is based on what you know about it, your background. All of these things kind of come together to give you your perspectives on different situations in life. Maybe you're talking about your viewpoints about social issues, politics, relationships. You can have a lot of different perspectives on things. And also, education also helps redefine her identity, who she is, who she sees herself becoming. And that's changed a lot because of the education that she's been receiving at her university.
Indeed, and it goes on to say her letters also emphasize the importance of self-discovery and ongoing self-improvement. So that's also what we see in the letters. They emphasize the importance of discovering yourself, of knowing who you are, and also improving yourself as time goes on. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's take a break now and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师，今天讲解的是 Unit 6，Daddy Long Legs 这篇文章第二天的内容。那第一天的内容告诉我们说，主角 Judy Abbott 童年比较辛苦，可是呢，长腿叔叔资助他，所以虽然出身孤儿院，可是顺利完成大学教育。那最后呢，和长腿叔叔结为连理。那今天的课程内容是在探讨，如果我们从21世纪现代的角度来看，小说反映出的到底是什么样的价值观？课文的作者呢，呈现了小说两面的评价。在课文标题里面，我们就看到有的人会认为，小说显示的是女性的价值，透过教育可以不断提升，但也有些人认为小说凸显的是传统的价值观，女人要依附在男人之下，男性的财富对女性有吸引力。好，那我们来看一些学习重点吧。请同学先看到第一段的第二个句子。第一个句子交代完说作者是谁以后呢，就是 Jean Webster。第二个句子紧接着告诉我们，介绍这个作者他的背景。原来他们家有很好的传统，怎么说呢？这个家庭是非常的对教育投入的。They are committed to education and social issues. 这整个家庭呢是很关注教育和社会议题。那再来的话，我们看到第三个句子。那这本小说它反映出前面这个 reflects these themes。These themes 所指的是什么？就前面教育社会议题。好，那再来的话，我们看到第四个句子。The narrative unfolds through Judy's letters. 好，到这边为止，请同学看到 narrative。narrative 其实就是指 story， 也就是呢这本小说。那怎么样呢？这个情节在一封一封信呢当中呢展开来 unfolds， 那就是逐渐的发展。好，再来，我们看到第二段 那整个小说它要讲的主题到底是什么呢？主要的就是 transformative power of education， 就教育是有转化提升的能力的。 transformative 那就是改变人的意思，它是有转化的能力的。那再来我们看到第3个句子， education fosters her independence。 那 Judy 这个女主角也是因为受了大学教育，所以呢她可以更加的独立。这个 foster 请同学特别画起来，很好用的一个动词，我们可以把它理解成促进。那也就是受了教育以后，那我们的女主角 Judy 当然就可以更加的独立了。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. This is day 2 of our literature unit, and we're talking about the novel Daddy Longlegs by Gene Webster that was published in 1912. I wanted to mention that part of history is one of my favorite periods of all time. We call it the Victorian period, the Edwardian period. If you're into fashion, ladies, you might have seen a hairstyle called the Gibson girl, which I thought was so pretty growing up. Anyway, that's the part of history, the era that we're looking at. And obviously it will influence or impact the author who's writing this novel. I love to read old novels because you get an idea of what they felt about their own culture at the time. So we learned that our author grew up in a family that was into education. They felt that was very important. They also felt strongly about social issues and wanted to help society change for the better. This book itself is a series of letters. We call it an epistolary novel. It's kind of a tough word there. Don't worry too much about it. But this novel is just a series of letters back and forth between Judy Abbott, the orphan who has been given the opportunity to go to university, and her benefactor, whose nickname is Daddy Longlegs. So the novel's primary theme, the biggest theme you can see going through the book, is the transformative or changing power of education. It can really change people. Her college experiences give her a lot of chances and opportunities that she never would have had as an orphan growing up in an orphanage and never having a chance to go to school. So this is a big deal for her. It fostered or helped her independence grow. It influenced her perspectives on life, and it redefined who she was as a person. And her letters, it says, emphasize the importance of self-discovery, figuring out what you want out of life, what's important to you, what you don't like, the kind of people you want to hang out with, and how to keep improving yourself as an individual.
Right. This, of course, is common knowledge nowadays. Of course, nowadays, men and women both feel this way. But back then, I suppose it was quite different. Women were still on the lower part of society where men ran things. So this was quite radical for the time. And now moving on to the third paragraph, the novel also explores rigid social class and gender roles in the early 20th century U.S. or United States. Okay, so it also kind of talks about the rigid social class. If something's rigid, it's stiff, it's not easy to change. And they had that social class in the United States and probably in England and other parts of the world where if people wanted to change things, they just said, nope, you can't do it. That's the way it's been done for hundreds of years, and we're not going to change now. It works. Why would we change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as we say.
It was broken, though, wasn't it?
We know now, but back then they probably thought it wasn't.
Well, not for the higher or upper classes of society.
Oh, it worked well for them, of course.
Yeah.
If they didn't care that, poor people were dying at large rates working in mines and things like that. But in any case, yes, it explores rigid social class and gender roles in the early 20th century. A gender just refers to whether you're a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, although nowadays we get gender and sex, and people are trying to redefine those terms. But basically, gender does refer to whether you're male or female.
Now, as Judy becomes more independent, she challenges her benefactor's authority and expectations. So I'm sure they're having very interesting correspondence here, right? When they write back and forth to each other. Her benefactor is probably an old-fashioned man who feels like, society's fine the way it is. We don't need to have women with all this power and give women more rights than they have currently. It's enough. And so I'm sure their correspondence was really interesting as it went back and forth. And she became more able and confident to argue with him in their letters and tell him exactly what she was thinking. And her perspective was different from his. They didn't always agree. So you can see that her independence was growing and she was able to, I think, just communicate what she felt more clearly with him, at least.
Now, here's the next sentence. It says, her discussions with her benefactor in the letters on women's suffrage and career plans in her letters mirror or reflect early feminist movements and social changes. So, of course, she's talking about women's suffrage. It's not suffering. It's suffrage. That's different. Suffrage is just simply the right to vote, especially the women's right to vote, which happened in the early 20th century in the U.S.
But suffrage alone just means the right to vote. It does not refer to women.
Okay.
So the right to vote in elections, I thought that suffrage was the right for women to vote. I just looked this up, actually.
Okay.
That's why they've added women's in front of suffrage, just so you know. So
Good point there. Yes, I suppose they have let people think that suffrage just refers to women's right to vote as if they're the only victims. I think poor men at the time were not able to vote as well. So
no, that's still the case in some countries.
This is a pretty complicated topic, which we don't have time to talk about. But basically, she was talking about women's right to vote in her letters. And she was also talking about her career plans. When I graduate, I'd like to get a job at a university as a professor or whatever it was. And that reflects early feminist movements. The early movements of feminism at the time were talking about such issues, the women's right to vote, being able to succeed in your careers and not be expected to stay home and just take care of kids and stuff like that. And, of course, there were also social changes, different interpretations of what roles men and women would play in society.
In the next paragraph, it talks about contemporary critics. These are critics in modern society. Today, we are in the modern era. If you're a critic, you're someone who judges the merits or the benefits of some artistic work. It could be a movie, it could be a TV show, it could be a piece of literature like this is. So contemporary critics, people who have opinions about this particular piece of work, feel like that portraying the ideal man as wealthy is not accurate, is not right. And romantic relationships should not be portrayed as transactional. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. This is a popular word today, transactional. When I see it, sometimes I think of prostitution, where women have sex with men and then they give the women money. That's transactional.
A business deal, basically.
Yeah, transactional just means business. You do this for me and I'll do this for you. And it kind of looks like this to contemporary critics. Hey, this book looks like, she was supposed to say, oh, I'll marry you because you've put me through college. Is that right? No.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, they're just looking at the fact that, hey, he's a rich guy. And, of course, they just sort of had a business deal. It's different nowadays, although most women today still want to be together with a rich guy. But they argue that Jervis exploits Judy's gratitude and innocence to influence her values and believe that Judy is mainly attracted to his wealth. So, again, this is the modern interpretation of this novel. They argue, or they propose the idea that Jervis, the uncle, exploits Judy's gratitude. He takes advantage of the fact that she's grateful for him sponsoring her university career, and he also exploits her innocence, the fact that she's an orphan and she probably doesn't know better. And so he's taking advantage, he's using her, that influences her because of that. And they believe that Judy is just attracted to him because he's got money. If he didn't have so much money, she probably wouldn't give him the time of day.
Now, that's the view from contemporary critics, people who are expressing unfavorable opinions about the book. And now, on the other hand, we've got defenders. A defender is someone who defends something from attack. So they kind of defend or support the opposite side here. They respond that the novel simply reflects its era. That's when it was written in the 1900s, the early turn of the century. And hey, things were different back then. Don't be so critical. Having a 14-year age gap between Judy and Jervis, hey, that was typical of those times. It really was, too. The men would get married at an older age because a lot of the rich ones, the wealthy ones, were busy getting their education and getting their careers going. And then they'd look around and they'd want to marry a young girl that could have a lot of kids for them. So that was typical of the time. You shouldn't be criticizing the novel. It was really, I think, cutting edge for the time it was written in. I think she was very much a feminist pioneer.
Right, and they also emphasize, or they point out, that their relationship is founded on mutual affection and respect, not just financial considerations. So if something's mutual, it is equal between people participating in whatever transaction it is. They had mutual affection. He loved her and she loved him. It was mutual. You can say this sometimes when somebody says, oh, I've heard a lot about you. Oh, the feeling's mutual. I think you're a great person too. And in this particular case, yes, they felt this affection and respect for each other. They respected each other equally. And it wasn't just for financial considerations. She didn't love him just because he had money, and he didn't love her because she was poor and he could take advantage of her and order her around or whatever. It was based on mutual respect.
Now, despite varied interpretations, everybody has their own interpretations of this novel, of course. This book remains a thought-provoking read. It makes you think about life and what you believe, yourself. How do you feel about these issues? It invites readers to appreciate the historical and cultural shift from Webster's era to today. Things have changed. The shift here refers to the change. You can shift your body, change the position of your body, but you can shift an opinion by just changing it. So shift is used in a figurative sense and a literal sense, both. So it's interesting. I think it's fun to look back and see how people in history believed or felt about certain issues. And I think we can learn a lot from that. Just, kind of challenging our own views about things in today's era. That's all we have to say about this right now. We've got to wrap up quickly. We're going to listen to our Chinese teacher one more time, and then we'll be back.
好，我们看到第3段的第一个句子。小说里面呢，除了探讨教育以外，它其实对于社会现象，也就是社会阶级，还有这种比较固定的，大家觉得比较刻板印象的性别角色，其实也有一些探讨。不过呢，当然，因为小说是在20世纪初写的嘛，那探讨的是当时的这个社会。The novel also explores rigid social class. 请把 rigid 画起来，指的就是僵化的。好，然后而且呢，它也探讨性别的角色。rigid 画起来之后，同学要知道的是，它的相反词其实是 flexible。因为 rigid 就是没有弹性，很僵化，那相反的就是很有弹性的。再来，我们看到第3个句子。那 Judy 她在她的这个等于是小说当中的女主角，那这个女主角她很常写信呢，Her discussions on women's suffrage， 信中呢讨论了很多议题，其中有一个呢就是女性的选举权 ，suffrage 所指的就是选举权。然后呢，还有就是自己的生涯规划。那这一些讨论怎么样呢？我们看到动词在哪里？在 mirror 不是镜子哦，这里是动词反映。那这一些讨论呢，反映出了女性运动在初期有什么样子的发展，女权运动到底呢有哪些发展？好，再来我们看到第4段的第1个句子，我们要看到的是 such as 后面这个动词。好，那现代的文学批评家呢，当然会去再重新审视，会觉得这个小说它所描述的男性和女性 比方说描写男性的时候 portraying the ideal man as wealthy。 好，把 A 描述成怎么样，那所以我们就用 portray 这个受词，再用 as， 后面所用的呢是形容词，那这里就当作呢补语，前面所讲的这个 ideal man， 这些男性是怎么样，相当富有的，他描述的男性都是很富有的。好，那而且呢，男女之间的交往呢，就像交易一样 transactional， 这里一样呢是形容词，那把它比喻成说男女之间的交往呢，就像是在做交易。再来，请看到第二个句子 Jervis exploits Judy's gratitude， 请同学把 exploit 画起来。我们大部分看到 exploit 的时候，其实都是比较负面的意思，等于现代的这些文学批评家回去看的时候，会觉得 Jervis 根本就是在利用 Judy 对他感念的心情。好，那最后呢，我们请同学看到第5段咯。第5段最后文章的作者告诉我们说，这本小说当然从现代的角度来看会有一些争议，那会有不一样的诠释，但这本小说 Daddy Long Legs remains a thought-provoking read。 有2个地方要注意，首先这里的 read 呢所指的是名词，那当然就是一本好的读物了。好， thought-provoking 这个形容词也要注意，会让我们有所省思，让我们进一步的去思考很多的议题，我们就可以说 thought-provoking， 可以用这个复合形容词引发我们做很多思考的，就是 thought-provoking。 好的，谢谢大家。
That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please make sure you join us again next time for another edition of our program. And check out this novel yourself. You might enjoy it. And also remember to check out our content on Facebook and YouTube. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.